the biggest rule changes that we have really seen, and something that has really helped bring a lot more exposure and really fan engagement into the league, is that they have behind the scenes of the calling plays, they have behind the scenes of the replays, the on-field interviews, and then most importantly, which I think a lot of fans are really digging, is the ref conversations. So there's a lot of that really just stops all the questioning that every fan has when a ref is making a decision, because we see it on Twitter all the time, the back and forth between what they should have done, all this sort of stuff. So what are your thoughts on that?
This is definitely my favorite part of the XFL, the behind the scenes part, when you can have the coach, you can hear the coach call the play, hear the QB call the play in the huddle, and then them run that play.
Right.
The best part of the behind the scenes is definitely the ref communications. I think that's something the NFL should definitely do, because when you have these questionable calls and you don't know what's going to happen, you have the announcers and like, oh, I think this is going to happen, I think this is going to happen, but to actually have the referees in the booth of like what they're looking at, what they're seeing, what they're talking about, having that kind of transparency that's something that I could definitely see being in the NFL in very shortly.
I could see it as well, and just the one thing that I believe that they need to tweak after this season in the XFL is it's the in-game interviews and with the players and the coaches. I quite honestly really don't like that. Just in the sense of these players are here to focus and be very engaged and only engaged on this game, and they shouldn't have to worry about not only what they could be saying on national television that could really affect them for the rest of their not only playing career but the rest of their life. And we really saw a very good example in Matt McGloin's comments this past week. But just I just want to continue this point of, you really got to think about when a bad play happens, especially that competitive nature comes out, you're not going to be thinking about every single thing that you're saying. And if it's if it's politically correct, or if you're going to be swearing, you could really say anything.
That's the whole point. I think that's why the XFL is what it is, because it's different. When you think about the Richard Sherman interview a couple of years ago against the 49ers, how that was right after the game. So he was still, in game mode. He was still heated. And you have all these interviews in the XFL games that are, you can go up to a coach mid-game and, why did you call that? You go up to a player just threw an interception and say, what happened? What was wrong? I think that's cool because you can, see their honest reaction. Because like when you go, from a football player standpoint, you go to the sideline, you talk to your coach, talk to the players about what went wrong. But having some person in your face be like, what went wrong? What happened? And then you be able to say the answer. I think it's going to be really interesting. You're going to have a lot more Matt McGloin interviews where someone's heated on the sideline because something went wrong.
Right.
Something didn't go their way, so they're saying this certain thing because of that. I think that's really cool. I think they definitely could end up changing it because something could blow up in their face. Someone could go off, say something they're not supposed to. But I think that's part of the excitement, is that you don't know what's going to happen.
Right, and so we're going to touch on the Matt McGloin thing in 1 second, but I just want to make this one last point, is that we have seen very similar things happen in the NFL with the mic'd up videos, but the one thing that I thought about with the mic'd up videos is that they edit those. And so there's got to be so many different things that these NFL players are saying left and right, not only about, the players, coaches, different stuff that could be happening off the field and that sort of stuff. And so it's just the whole sort of censoring it that I really think that they need to do a better job of. And really, it's a thing where you can't really change it in a sense, because obviously the game is live, so you're not going to be able to take 10 to 15 minutes to really hear what this kid says and really be able to edit it up. But maybe, I don't know, not do it right after, because with the Matt McGloin situation, they did it right after an interception. Obviously, he's not going to be happy about a freaking interception. Like, are you kidding me right now? No player would be happy about an interception. So maybe if they wanted to change it just a little bit, just to keep the same sort of excitement that they're having, is do it maybe 5 to 10 minutes before or something like that. Maybe just to give a tiny bit of time where you're able to see what he says, and if you want that to be broadcasted. Because with what happened with Matt McGloin, the XFL is going to want that to happen, because it put them in the news and it made exposure to them.
Exactly.
But in just the sense of the players, I don't think that the players are going to be huge fans of this, just for the example of what happened with Matt McGloin.
No, I definitely think if I was a coach or a player, I wouldn't like this rule. But as a fan standpoint, I really enjoy it because I like watching people, their honest reaction. But I can see them having problems with this, but I could also see them interviewing players and then reviewing it and then airing it, the next commercial. After you get a commercial break, you look it over, make sure nothing, seriously bad happened, and then show it the next time they're on the field or next time you bring them up in the media. I think it's definitely a cool idea, and it's something that the NFL is not doing, and that's why I think it's so cool. It's maybe not because it's the best idea, it's just because it's different.
Yeah, I like it. It's just those sort of questioning in the heat of the moment. That's the one thing that sort of ticks me off.
Yeah, as a player, I wouldn't like that.
Right, exactly. Especially as a past athlete. Like, I used to be a baseball player, and so if I struck out and somebody asked me, so why did you strike out? I would give them a very arrogant and maybe a pretty mean answer.
Right.
And it just wouldn't be my personality, and it wouldn't be something that I would really want to be portrayed on television of how I usually act in everyday world.
Right.
But, really just touching on what we've been talking about with Matt McGloin. So Matt McGloin is a part of the New York Guardians, who are currently 1-1. But so last game, McGloin started off a game throwing 8 for 19 with 44 yards, and he threw 2 interceptions. And just to give you a little bit of an insight of who this quarterback is, he's a former Penn State quarterback, and he also played for the Eagles as well. And so the Guardians actually decided to bench McGloin at halftime, and McGloin decided to say right before halftime, after he threw an interception to ESPN, that we need to change this entire game plan. And he even alluded to the different issues on the offense and calling the group's first half output embarrassing. And so at the end of the second quarter, the Guardians trailed the defenders 12-0. And during the conversation on the sideline, McGloin just didn't want to name any names while he criticized teammates' understanding of the offense. And it was just very interesting to see what the coach's reaction was to it. And the coach decided to say, McGloin just needs to play better. And so after this all went down, and really the whole embarrassment of Matt McGloin and his comments all over ESPN, we've seen it for the past 2 days.
Right.
One, do we see him as a starting quarterback for the New York Guardians this next week? And two,
that's going to be,
could this be the end of Matt McGloin in the XFL?
I mean, the possibility of him starting next week is definitely there, only because they've had all this time to prep and have Matt McGloin as their starting QB. But it depends on how the coach and the association handle this, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely him starting next week. I could see it go either way. I could definitely see him starting just because he's clearly the better QB on the team. Right. But I could also see him not starting because he just called out his whole team for not playing so well and called out his coaching staff for not, calling the right plays and whole nine. It's just, this is why I think the XFL is going to be good, because we are having this kind of conversation where this player's had an outburst on field during the interview, and they said maybe what was on their mind. Maybe they shouldn't have said it, but that's what they were thinking. So I think it's definitely good.
And, this really does give Matt McGloin the reputation, in my opinion, for the rest of his NFL career, that he is not a guy who will lead, and he's not a guy who will make sacrifices for his team. And he's not really even a team player. And that was one of the biggest things and one of the biggest takeaways that I took away from when ESPN covered this, is that if even if he did get an NFL chance after this,
right,
or even if an NFL team was considering him whatsoever, that's going to be the first thing that they look at and that they think about is his leadership skills and his willingness to take risks and do it all for the team.
Yeah, if this is going to be one of the XFL is going to be the bridge league to the NFL. It's going to be interesting. They're going to bring up these interviews and say, why'd you say this? Why would you call your team out like this? This isn't what a leader does. It's going to be, if some of these players want to go from the NFL, from the XFL, it's going to be, these interviews are definitely going to be something that's brought up. It's going to be one of the first things that the coaches bring up and say, why would you say this? What made you say that? Sort of thing. I like it.